All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here, and we hope you enjoyed the presentation of Monarch Legacy of Monsters. My name is Scott Mance. I'll be just sort of like moderating the flow of questions here. So what I'll do is I'll call on you if you just say your name, your outlet nice and loud, and ask your question and fire away. And, who wants to go first? You, right there in the Carpenter shirt. John Carpenter shirt, nice and loud.
So my question is, maybe it'll apply to some of the others as well, but mostly from that direction. You and Godzilla have something in common. Your names have both appeared on a lot of comics, albeit in different capacities. So I'm really curious how your rich history in comics might have informed the direction that you took the show. And perhaps more importantly, is there a chance we'll see Godzilla playing one-on-one with an NBA star the same way he did with Charles Barkley?
Right. I can't comment on Godzilla's involvement with Charles Barkley or Vanilla Ice at this time. No further questions. No. TV and comics are serial mediums. They're serial storytelling mediums. They're driven. The longevity is due to the characters. And it was a very similar kind of thing, whether it's, working with Marvel and all those moving pieces or something like the world that Legendary has made. It was a very similar instinct, It was there's this amazing world and this cool myth with lots of question marks and how do we build a compelling story about real people moving through that isn't the same thing as the films. How do we make a television show rather than a scaled down movie for TV, right? This is a television first and foremost, and it's good. November 17th, Apple TV, November 17th. Did I get it right? Right? November 17th? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. Nice and loud. What's your name and what's your outlet?
Hi, my name's Jonathan Chu. I am with Tippett Geek.
Oh, hey, man.
I was just wondering, since you guys briefly mentioned season 2 at the panel, by any chance, if you guys were to do a season 2, do you think you would still do it with the same characters, or would you try to do it with the different characters since it seems so human-driven?
Well, I mean, yeah, we obviously want to do a season 2. The purpose of doing a television show is you want to have a story, to be able to continue that story and tell that story. And we are in there. There's certainly nothing official yet. Season 1 hasn't even premiered yet, but
November 17th on Apple TV.
Yeah. And it's good. I mean, clearly, creatively, you're always thinking ahead. We're thinking about that. We're having conversations about it, and we love the characters that we created, and we love the actors who play them. So our hope would be, to continue to tell that story for sure.
Next question. Your name, your outlet.
Zach Woshner, Screen Rant. I was wondering if you had any, insight as to the upcoming Godzilla X Kong movie, and if you had any push, any conflicts with storytelling in that, anything that they told you, oh, don't do this because we're doing that, any kind of synergy between these two upcoming projects.
Yes, the answer is yes. I mean, we're all under the Legendary umbrella. It is a shared universe. It's a shared mythology. So we do have to be very careful that we're not stepping on each other's toes story-wise, that, our show is going to premiere before the movie does, so we don't want to do anything that spoils any of the big plans that they have. So I obviously can't get into anything specific, but yeah, no, there's a great collaboration between us on the TV side and the team running the feature side, and that, they let us know what they're doing. We send them all of our scripts so they can read them and see, and we have conversations about it. And there were some adjustments that we had to make, where there were some ideas that we were excited about pursuing that they came back and said, hey, we're really going to kind of go into that territory in the movie. Can you make an adjustment and pivot to something else? And so it's an ongoing conversation.
Everybody's interested. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, but we both TV and features want to thrill audiences, so we have the same agenda. Everyone's working with each other to make sure that we have an outcome where everyone is succeeding, and we're telling a complete story. And TVs can inform features, and features can inform TV, and so the synergy is there, and we're trying to take advantage of it as much as we can.
Yeah, we don't want to cut the pie into smaller pieces. We want to make a bigger pie.
Sure. Thank you.
You were next. Name and outlet.
I'm Luciano Guaraldo from Notícias da TV Brasil. I have a question for Sean. When you have a character like Godzilla who has like 70-year history from a guy wearing a suit, the special effects.
What?
Sorry to disappoint you. How do
You
pay
never
homage
told me.
to all of that while also bringing your own flair, while respecting the design of the character for the movies? How do you balance all of that?
I mean, we want to make a consistent character that flows from the movies into the TV series. So we really took our inspiration from that. We worked heavily with our teams at Legendary and at Toho to make sure that characterization was consistent. I've worked on, I worked on Godzilla 2014, and I worked on King of the Monsters on my own side, and so I've gone through this iteration of, one of the things that was really a big career highlight for me was when I was an artist working on helping to develop the look of Godzilla's Heat Ray in the 2014 film, and so like seeing that on screen and seeing people cheer, like that was a really awesome experience for me. And so, but through that process, you're really aware of what Toho how Toho wants that to be portrayed and how Legendary wants it to be portrayed, and working inside of those frameworks is really important. And and to speak to what was said earlier, we had really great collaborators on those sides and people who would sort of steer us in the right direction if we were going off. And
and we wanted it to be our Godzilla, to some extent. We wanted the show not to be, as Matt put it, the TV-sized version of the movies. We wanted our own character, but at the same time, where it falls in the timeline is in the middle of the Legendary movies, so he can't look radically different from what he looks in the movies. It wouldn't make any sense.
Next question right there. Name and outlet.
Rachel Leishman from the Mary Sue. Obviously, you have Godzilla, who is legendary, but then you also have Kurt Russell and Wyatt Russell, which is
who are also
a different
it's legendary.
kind of
It's very cool that they're in this together for me. I'm obsessed with it.
Us too.
And so when you are dealing with that and you have these like very human characters, that is a draw for a lot of people as well. How do you guys navigate that on the creative side of like making sure those human characters are also so important as well as like the monsters that we do come in for?
Well, I think we said early on that we couldn't make a show that's just about monsters. It had to be a show about people that happen to live in a world where monsters are real. So the focus was always on what's the human story we want to tell. It's about this family and a multi-generational family saga, and we were lucky enough to get Kurt and Wyatt to come in and play that character that spans the generations, and links those two stories together. But I don't want to make it sound like the monsters were important, because they're certainly an absolutely critical and fun part of what this world is. But if we couldn't tell a story driven by these human characters that people wanted to watch, the show wouldn't work.
I did work with Kurt and Wyatt. We knew we had, maybe you could speak better to this, but just as actors, they were right away talking about how to build the character. And even like internally, I don't know if it was ever like a conscious thing, but we would start to refer to Wyatt's character as Lee and Kurt's as Shaw. And to watch the two of them, to watch Lee become Shaw and to see that Shaw used to be Lee, like they worked on it together. Like directorially, what was that?
Very organic, and they both brought so much passion and so many ideas to the table. And I think, as we mentioned on the panel, they were often, Kurt would read Wyatt scenes, Wyatt would read Kurt scenes, and then they'd swap notes and kind of meet in the middle. So they were always on the same hymn sheet.
They would give script notes on each other's scenes, and we would be like, well, wait, that's not your scene, but then you'd have to remind yourself, oh, well, but it's the same character.
Or then something would change in the scene for Lee, we would then have to let Kurt, so here's the thing that that Wyatt knows now, but that you now have to play that it was they were very engaged in that process. I think that's why they wanted to do it. Like, I think it was I hope it was fun for them.
Well, and I think they were really intrigued by playing this idea, because apparently, from what I heard, and Rana, maybe they had been offered roles before to play father and son. And that wasn't that exciting, but the idea of, no, you're the same character in different time periods was something that they had never been presented with before, that they were excited about.
The next question right there. Yes, that's allowed.
Hi, Barbara Dillon with Fanbase Press. Chris, piggybacking on your comment about the human side of the story, sci-fi and fantasy legacy often allow us to process the more challenging aspects of life. So with this specific installment, is there anything in particular that you wanted to tackle or to offer to audiences?
Well, I think it's about trauma. You know, I mean, if you look at Kate's character from the very beginning, she's suffering from post-traumatic stress. And what I hope what you reveal at the end of that episode is that the monster, the source of her trauma, isn't Godzilla. It's her father. It's abandonment. It was when she needed family and she needed the support from her father at the most critical time in her life. He wasn't there to give it. And that's what we hope worked about that is you see her surviving this in her traumatic flashback, you see her surviving the attack at G-Day, and you think, oh, that's what this story's about. It's about these characters. And then you realize, no, it's much deeper than that. It's much more personal than that. You know? And so that, when we started developing the season and trying to figure out, okay, well, how do you do a Godzilla show? I think there was a moment when we hit on that idea that we were like, oh, that's a story you can tell. That's a story that people might want to watch and follow and sustain it from episode to episode. So.
Yeah. That was one of the things that we loved about it is that we talk about the show as being something that represents the monsters in our lives, and sometimes those monsters are 200 feet tall, and sometimes they're the person sitting next to you.
Yeah, and that
we both like it at the same time. It really worked. We really nailed it.
Yeah.
There, like we said, it's not a 9/11 show. It's a 9/12 show, right? It's not about the movies are about the buildings that get knocked down. The show is about the people who get up afterwards and watching the resilience of humanity, right? And the power of found family and a forged family rather than one you're born into, and not being beholden to anyone's legacy, and it's really about people living in a world where they're underfoot of these things and continue to get up and be magnificent.
Yeah, and seeing how it transforms them and how they evolve and adapt, and hopefully you end up at the end of that season with a different set of characters than they were when they began.
Much flatter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right back here, nice and loud.
Hi, I'm Jillian Bluff with the Direct. So this is kind of going on with what we were just saying. Obviously, legacy is a very important part of the show. The title, the wrestler legacy with the cast in there, the generational plot.
Right.
What does legacy mean for you in the show, and how does this show fit into the overall legacy of this universe?
I feel like I like what
Andy.
Well, what does legacy for me, Chris Black personally mean, or within the?
For you within the show, how does?
Well, I think we talked a little bit before about the idea of legacy, and I think the fact that it was really with Apple's collaboration that became part of the title of the show, which I think was really genius because it works on so many different ways. What is the legacy of this family? But also, what is the legacy of Monarch? We talked before about how in the movies, this is an organization, the mythology of which supposedly goes back to right after the Second World War. In the movies, as far back as you go, is 1974, and most of it takes place in the 20-teens. So the idea of we're telling a legacy of this organization as seen through the prism of the Randa family. And I think that it gave us a touchstone for the stories we wanted to tell. It was always about, is this a legacy that you want to embrace? Or is it a curse that you've been saddled with that you need to free yourself from? And those are the choices, Kate in particular, but all the characters, the choices they're going to have to accept is as you peel back the secrets and you discover, oh, this is my legacy. Do I embrace it? Do I go down the same rabbit hole that took my family before me? Or do I walk away from it and try to save myself while I still can? And I hope that to me is kind of what legacy is.
Legacy suggests destiny, and destiny removes choice, right? So it's these characters making this choice and everyone has a different answer at different times in the show. And I think it's part of the fun of the first season is watching characters wrestle with it.
Yeah, so much of Destiny's story is about the chosen one.
Yeah.
And that Kate's not that.
Yeah.
Kate has to choose for herself whether she's
Yeah, they're not super special super scientists. They're not the ones with the secret. They're not the ones that she's a school teacher. He's a graphic designer. These are street level people presented with this path that upends everything about their world, and then they have to figure out what that means.
Right here, nice and loud. Yes.
Hi, mostly for Sean, but if anyone else can answer as well, I'd love
Your
it.
name and ally.
Oh, right, Jonathan Chu and Temple of Geek. I was just wondering, like, what was the majority of the inspiration behind some of the newer monsters that we were able to see inside of the trailer that we just got a peek at, and hopefully there's even more.
Yeah, I mean, so the philosophy and of the creature design of the Monsterverse is grounding the monsters in some sort of natural environmental structure, and then adding a whole bunch of science fiction flair on top of that, right? So, early on in the project, like I've been on board with this since like November 2021. Early on, I would just have meetings with these guys and like be like, "Hey, here's some weird
This is gross."
Exactly. Like,
Yeah,
like
literally.
just go to the bottom of the ocean to find the weirdest things you can find, and then come back up.
We would be on Zooms talking about character design, and while we're on the Zoom, Sean is like trolling the internet and throwing pictures up. Like, here's this squid, here's this, star mole, here's this, and we're like, oh.
Is that
ooh,
real?
Yeah. And the big creature that we have in the snowy environment. Matt, do you want to talk about that at all, or?
Well, yeah. No, I paid my son $5 a file to make Monarch files, and he would find gross and weird animals, and he had to send me a Wikipedia summary and a page of other research he had done, and then a bunch of photos. And I paid him $5 a thing, and he found this star.
So Matt managed to turn our job into his son's homework.
Yeah, right. It was not too far out of at-home schooling. Kid needed to earn something, and but he found the star-nosed mole, and that was the sort of beginning of what is it?
If you don't know what it is, look it up, and you'll.
So it was everywhere. What weird from, and there's a. You get whiffs and you see things that we've seen before, but then we also wanted to grow the fiend folio. We wanted to make it new. There's new critters we haven't seen, and there's old ones that kind of pop up again. So it was always finding these real phenomenon and then building putting the science fiction coding in.
Sean was really kept us honest about if this creature lives in this environment, does this make sense? Is this would it have feet like this if it has to walk on snow? Is it the right coloration to reflect heat from the sun? He was very rigorous about it. We wanted them to look cool, but it couldn't just be do whatever you want because it looks cool. And it had to have a logic.
It would be a learning curve for us. He'd be like, "Yeah, it's going to walk real stupid." We're like, "What do you mean? No, it's going to be cool. It looks great." And then he'd just say, "Oh yeah, okay, you're right." And we'd have to go and change and sort of grow there's some kind of basis in reality for everything.
Yeah. And one of the things that you guys stressed to me, in that first interview, is really wanting our characters to feel like they're part of the action. And so we made design choices to assist with that, sometimes making them a bit smaller if the environment's a bit smaller. Sometimes if we have the scope, then we can go big, and really making those decisions to make it fit into the terrain. And Matt said, sometimes we would have what seemed like a terrific idea, and then when the rubber meets the road, you're like, well, it's less terrific.
Yeah, we chased a bird for a while. We had a bird idea, and feathers that big just look dumb. And it was I don't think the bird's. Yeah.
Well, and I think Sean talked about this on the panel too. The opening sequence, the teaser to the, or not the teaser, the cold open to the pilot with the Skull Island with the spider versus the crab. Went through several different iterations of that. They were different. They were initially different creatures, and it had a lot to do with Matt Shakman finding the location in Hawaii where he wanted to shoot that, and then designing creatures that felt like they would live in this environment.
And that was a really, we had shot most of the first episode, but we were shooting the Hawaii portion at a later date. And so we had all these plans. We had the one really cool monster that everybody loved the design of, and then we could not find a location that made any sense. And so the locations team found this place, Lanai Lookout, which is this like volcanic rock that just juts out into the ocean. And we were like, okay, well, if we go with what was originally scripted, we're going to go to Hawaii and shoot into a blue screen. And nobody wanted to do that. We wanted to use the locations. That's a really big thing that I'm proud of the production for achieving, is finding these amazing locations and shooting in them. We adapted the creature design, and we adapted Chris rewrote the script, Matt reboarded it, we revised it, we redesigned the creature to just help it all make sense and tie together.
I'm just curious, you talked about the learning curve. I'm just curious what the learning curve was like for the younger cast members when it came to cast. Rana.
You mean in terms of casting them?
Yes.
Well, as I mentioned in the panel, this was Ren's first experience on a set. And a little scary to put him in a room with Kurt Russell right away. But he really stood up, I think. I mean, I wasn't on set, so you can speak to that better than I can.
He was a gent on set, and Ren was just, he was like a sponge. He just wanted to learn, and I think he was aware of his place in the food chain. But I think the demographic of those young actors, in tandem with Kurt and Wyatt, especially with Kurt, because in the present timeline he interacts with them, and Kurt was such a big champion of Ren, and it was just wonderful to see them sort of bounce off each other.
Yeah. All right, next, right here, name and outlet.
JJ Goodman from that hashtag show. So you saw in the first episode that a good portion of the human story is going to be rooted in a number of separate personal relationships that throughout the series are all going to kind of come interwoven together. As you watch the first few episodes, you can see that those relationships grow more complex. There's hints, there's secrets. How challenging was it to kind of keep all of that together while still balancing it with the spectacle of monsters and keeping it grounded?
Well, it's always like anything, anything good is hard, kind of, I mean, I think it was challenging, but we knew we didn't want to take shortcuts, and we have a great staff of writers, just incredibly diverse and, different perspectives, different levels of experience, some huge fans of genre material in the Monsterverse, and it was really a collaborative. I wouldn't say it was it wasn't something that Matt and I had to do on our own, and some of the best things in the series are stuff that we didn't come up with.
There's a big thing in episode 6 that Andrew Colville, one of our writing producers, pitched, and it was so shocking that we realized we had to do it. And
there was a thing that we were running out of steam on. It's like, how do we keep doing this? How do we keep doing this? And then Andy was like, well, let's not do that. Let's just do this. And it changed. So you can't be precious to what your first thought is, right? Because something better. And look, you start to learn who the actors are, and you start to see how it all comes together. Andrew had this amazing pitch, and it shook the blanket pretty good. But you have to be willing. And change the trajectory of the story for the rest of the season.
Yeah, for the better. It was great. It was a godsend.
Then you run to the board, you start moving cards around.
Yeah, and just everyone, suddenly the energy comes and everyone's not, we're going to get out of this. Everyone knows, not only are we out of this, but we have miles of open road and we can just rock it to the, it's part of the collaborative.
And it's also, it is just, it's time and effort and experience too. One of my favorite jobs I ever worked on was I spent 2 seasons on a show called Ugly Betty, and it was they were incredibly complex farces to write, and you had 1 million characters who all want 1 million different things, all have competing agendas, and we had this amazing staff of writers, and the boards on that show were the most complex. Every character had their own color, and they were like the card would be cut in half, and it'd be half one color, half the other color, because the scene was weighted between 2 different characters. But it was a great training ground for how to sort of keep all those plates spinning at the same time, because one character's story doesn't stop just because you've cut to the other character's story. So it was, it's hard, but it's what makes it fun.
And I think that these, both Chris and Matt have made a career out of integrating genre and character, and it's something that comes second nature to them. We're so lucky that they were the tip of the spear creatively, because to them it's such a seamless. They think of those two things together, and they're never shortchanging either one.
Ever.
Well,
sometimes.
Ronnie from PIPT. Were there any other familiar names in Hollywood that you guys were looking to use? Kurt Russell or Wyatt Russell were interested in the project?
I don't know that we can mention anyone by name, but yeah, it was a pretty extensive casting.
Yeah, but I think once we landed on that, which we landed on really quickly, we couldn't let it go. As hard as their agent made it for us.
Yeah, we didn't put all of our chips there, but we put most of the chips. It was just such a right solution.
It was kind of a perfect storm. I mean, with Kurt, both his talent as an actor and Wyatt's talent as an actor, Kurt's history of genre, just everything he brings to the table with all the classic characters he played, the fact that they wanted to do a show together. That they look so remarkably similar that you could cast them as the same character. I mean, just yes, we did look at other options, and there were some other really talented people who we had considered, but at the end of the day, like Rana says, it was there really was no other choice.
Yeah, we got our first choice.
Yeah.
One more right here. Yes.
David Nakrani PL. I have a question, because in the first episodes we are jumping a lot in time through different periods. How hard was it to connect it so good that the viewer will know where he is in the story, that he will not get lost?
It's a piece of cake.
I mean, a lot of it, we had really excellent directors that were, I mean, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the USPs of this show is that in a way it's almost like two shows in one.
One of the what are the shows?
What?
What are the show? USP? What did you say? What does that mean?
Unique selling point.
Oh, it's a unique selling point of the show. I didn't know that. I'm sorry. I said, shit, did I miss a memo?
I thought that was an American thing.
No.
Yeah, it was like two shows in one. So you had, two bites of the cherry. And working with, two bodies of cast who don't interact with each other. So it was like two shows. I think clear storytelling, which comes from the script, and just working liaison with your actors and understanding, how those two timelines, dovetail and and complement one another. But it all comes from the page.
Even in those shows, you're jumping in time, like it's 57, 59.
Mm-hmm. Well, but the other thing too is I think, and yes, it does move around a bit, and there are times where we really needed to put the chyrons up so okay, so you can center yourself and this is where I am. But I think it comes a lot down to trust the audience. The audience is smarter than they will figure it out, and if it takes a second, if they're confused for a minute, that's okay. It's give them a minute and it'll be fine. I'm a firm believer in that. It's and I think as a viewer, I like it when the people writing the show allow me to be smart. It's like don't spoon feed me. Let me, I can give me a second. I'll figure it out. And so I really, when we were breaking the stories, we really tried to sort of structure it in a way that it could be a little bit of a puzzle at times. I think that's okay. People like figuring puzzles out.
It creates another thread of drama. Well, wait a second. How did they get from there to there?
Yeah.
Oh, and then suddenly there's a twist, and now there's more story. You don't know everything that you think you know when you know it, and it's a way to.
And I think it gets easier, obviously, as the season progresses, and you familiarize yourself with the cast of characters. Okay, these people live in this time. So as soon as you see, Wyatt, you go, okay, I'm in the flashback story. It's there's a shorthand that you establish pretty quickly. But I think it's I like it when it's a teeny bit confusing.
And if it's a show about putting together the history of Monarch, it should be a puzzle to figure out.
there is a little bit of a visual tell with it as well that Jess Hall, our DOP on the first block, came up with, which was there's a slightly different film emulation look to the whole to the stuff that's happening in one timeline with a really heavy film grain, and then our more contemporary stuff is more in that digital look, and that's very intentional, wanting to create that. The lens choices we had and a lot of other things give it a consistent character, but then we can create a little bit of differentiation visually, and I feel like the way that it was done, it doesn't ruin the puzzle in that way. It still makes it feel really coherent.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. We're just going to ask you to stay seated while our panel exits. But once again, Monarch Legacy of Monsters drops the first 2 episodes on Apple TV Plus on November 17th. So thank you for being here. Hope you enjoyed the presentation and the panel and your questions, and enjoy the rest of your New York Comic.
Yeah, thank you everybody. Thank you so much.